Hello and welcome to Foreign Correspondent. I'm Mark Corcoran. Tonight, Christians in Cairo, living on the edge.
Some extraordinary stuff going on here.
And Vanuatu's root of all happiness. It may come as no surprise to hear that the majority of Egyptians, some 90% of the population, are Muslim. Still, they like to see themselves as living in a secular state, where citizens have the freedom to practice any religion. But many of the 8 million Coptic Christians who live there may beg to differ. They feel marginalised and discriminated against. The largest number live in an extraordinary ghetto in Cairo, quite literally on the scrap heap of the city. Their hardship was transformed into tragedy over the weekend when a rock slide blamed on nearby construction crushed dozens of ghetto houses. The death toll is still rising. Before the disaster, Evan Williams ventured into the Christian ghettos of Cairo.
$10 million tourists visit Egypt every year. But there's a side to Cairo most of them never see. Many parts of Cairo are cramped and dirty, but this feels different. This looks like the people are actually living in the rubbish. We have to move into the area cautiously and first find a vantage point to see the scale of the place.
Wow. The most amazing sight. I didn't expect that at all.
This is the slum of Manshiat Nasser. It's the biggest single concentration of Christians in Egypt.
Every house, it looks like, has got these piles, these bags of rubbish on top of them, and it's not just on the roofs. I'm seeing that within the piles of rubbish, there are people actually sitting there, like this lady down here, just sorting through the rubbish, and then underneath them, there are animals, goats and chickens and pigs, being fed rubbish that's being brought into the community. And it's not just that, I've got to say, the stench is absolutely overwhelming. It's like a sickly sort of smell that just gets trapped in the back of your throat and makes your eyes water.
We can't film on the street, but arrange to meet a guide who will show us around the quieter back alleys. His name is Isaac, an official in the local church.
Some big rats up there.
He told me the people who live here are called the Zabaleen, Arabic for the rubbish people. This is because they collect and recycle Cairo's garbage by hand. Isaac told me there are up to 100,000 Christians living off the rubbish business in Cairo, many proud their recycling cleans up the streets. He explained why Muslims avoid the area.
Because pigs are raised here on the recycled rubbish, the organic rubbish, Muslims don't like living in this area, and Christians move into this area, he says, because they find it hard to find apartments or flats anywhere else, so they tend to move in even if they're not engaged in the rubbish. He's being very careful about what he says about that.
That night we've been invited back into the slum. Our guide this time is Father Peter from the Zabaleen Church. He told us that the Zabaleen people are a closed community. They're nervous of talking to outsiders, especially journalists, for fear of retribution from the government. The government denies it, but we're told it doesn't want these pictures getting out because it's embarrassed people are living like this.
Well, we're finally inside a house here, and there's this pile of rubbish. It's just layers and layers and layers of rotting rubbish, and it is absolutely crawling with giant rats. Right there.
This is the entrance to the family home. Soso says she's worried about her children's health.
The mother is just telling us that sometimes the rats who are here, which are really big, eat the ears of the children when they're sleeping.
For Muslims to live with pigs would be unthinkable.
Why do you stay here then with the family? Why don't you leave and go to another place?
Mamdouh told me there's no other way for him to make a living because this is all he knows how to do.
Where else do we go? This is where we eat, this is where we drink, this is where we live, this is where we make our money, this is our livelihood.
Mamdouh said his eldest children, at just 12 and 14, have left school to help him with the recycling.
They go and collect the rubbish out in the city, they bring it all back from the city, they sort it here, the whole family sorts it. What they can recycle, they sell to traders. What they can't use, they take to a landfill, a government landfill site, and it goes there.
We'd been invited to an important gathering deeper inside the Zabaleen slum. Christianity has been practiced continuously in Egypt for nearly 2,000 years. We witnessed a ceremony that's changed little since the founding of the church. This church is literally underground, hewn out of solid rock. The Zabaleen's chief priest, Father Saman, was performing a casting out of demons ritual.
Some extraordinary stuff going on here. The lady who's just gone through wants to become pregnant. This old lady obviously has problems, health problems, and she can't move her legs. And the woman who's about to come on here now is being brought here by her father because he says she's got an evil spirit.
The Christians told us they can perform these rituals privately as long as they do not try to attract Muslims for conversion. Surrounded by Muslim minarets, Manshiat Nasa is a Christian ghetto, walled in by religious difference and a lack of economic alternatives. We return to the underground church to ask Father Saman how his congregation is treated by their Muslim neighbours and the government.
Good morning, Father. How are you? Good morning.
In daylight, I can see the extent to which the church is concealed in the mountainside. Yet he told me this chamber can sit 12,000 people, one of the biggest churches in the Middle East. He explained that he had no choice but to excavate the church.
You need permission to build a church, and that permission takes a long time and is rarely actually ever given at the end of the day. How do you feel about the fact that you can't necessarily build a church this size above ground, somewhere nice?
He claimed Christians are discriminated against by law.
He said if you can build a mosque, which you can in Egypt, you should be able to build a church, and you can't get that permission. He said that's not right. They should not be treated as Muslims or Christians. You should be just treated as people, as citizens of Egypt.
The Egyptian government says it's studying a law which would unify the approval process for building all houses of worship.
The longer we stay here, the more this feels like really a police state. There's secret police all over the streets. We get stopped and asked for our permissions everywhere. Without those permissions, we couldn't film anything. And the people we're all starting to meet are all terrified of being taken in by the Secret Service. We're now heading out of Cairo to an area about 300 kilometres south of the city where the Christian Zabaleen community originally came from.
That night, we went to the main town of Asyut. Like every hotel in Egypt, a policeman recorded our movements.
We're now in the hotel, but we have to be very careful because we're here really to meet a group of Christians who we're told are facing some very specific and very real problems. But we're told it's very risky for them to see us. We've had to go through an intermediary, and we're going to use them to get to these people to find out what's really going on here.
Next morning, we gave our minder and translator the slip to meet our contact. She's very nervous and wants us to move quickly off the street. We're taken to what she calls a safe place. Inside, a distressed family is waiting to talk to us.
We've been told to keep this very quick, otherwise our local contact says she's going to be arrested and in real trouble.
Atef is a Christian. He told us he wants the world to know his story. He and his wife said their daughter Engie has been missing for 5 months.
On the 9th of July this year, his 17-year-old daughter was on her way down to the local church when he says she disappeared, she was kidnapped, and he has heard nothing from her ever since. He's got all these documents that he sent to the police and the authorities. He's had no answers until recently, that he says the police told him she's already married to a Muslim.
To stop him looking, he said, the police jailed him for 2 days.
He got a call that she was in an apartment in Giza in Cairo, a couple of 100 kilometres to the north. He went there and he said instead he found the police who arrested him, handcuffed him and held him on the roof before he was finally released.
Gamalat is the missing girl's mother. She believes the police refused to act because her daughter is a Christian.
The government knows where our daughter is, they know where she is, why don't they tell us? We're not treated as human beings, we don't want to be in Egypt anymore. I just want my daughter back, she should be in my arms right now.
The government said claims of forced conversion are invariably unsubstantiated and made by the families of young Coptic girls who have become romantically involved with Muslim men. Egypt portrays itself as a modern secular state that protects freedom of worship, but we're hearing claims that state security services are getting heavily involved in a person's choice of religion. Most sensitive of all, it seems, is when a Muslim wants to convert to Christianity.
I want to say this in the car because I don't want to hold on to this document for terribly long. It's a new report just released by Human Rights Watch here, and it deals with the problems of identity and religion. The state does not recognise conversions from Islam and refuses to allow civilians legally to change their religious affiliation or to change a Muslim name to a Christian name on their national ID cards. And very disturbingly, it has an account of a man who was taken in by the state security investigations officers, and he told them, I was beaten, they gave me electric shocks 3 times and hung me by my hands for 5 days and 4 nights. Hi, Gasser. Hi.
Gasser Abdel Razak wrote the Human Rights Watch report.
If I'm a Muslim and I convert to Christianity, what happens to me?
You don't get an ID card. That fact does not get recognized by the state.
If you can't say who you are, what your religion is on your ID card, what does that really mean?
If you can't get an ID card, which is the case now for the past 3-4 years, you can't do anything. You can't get your education, you can't get a driver's license, you can't get your passport. I mean, your ID card is basically controls every aspect of your daily life in Egypt.
One Christian group claims this year alone 22 Egyptians were released with no charge after spending months in prison for trying to convert from Islam to Christianity. The government describes these claims as utterly false. Converts from Islam claim they risk death. After many failed attempts, we finally meet a convert willing to talk, Christine, as we'll call her. Christine told me she converted from Islam to Christianity 7 years ago as a matter of personal conviction. She'd come here with one of her 2 daughters.
What could happen to you now that you are a Christian? What danger are you in?
She told me she's terrified of the secret police. She knows Christians who claim to have been threatened with torture and rape.
Her friend, who was a Christian, was regularly taken in by the National Security Secret Service. Very powerful organisation here in Egypt. She was warned to stop being a Christian, to go back to Islam, because they said to her, we can take out your teeth one by one and we can take out your fingernails, plus your 3 daughters won't remain virgins if you don't return to Islam.
While she spoke, Tears welled up in Christine's eyes.
بياخدوهم وينزلوهم تحت المسجد تحت علشان خاطر يصلوا.
They're abused in the street, they're spat at, cigarettes are thrown at them. Her young daughter, who's 11, is hit by the teacher and told to wear the veil and taken to the mosque to pray, even though she doesn't know anything about the Islamic faith.
Egypt's government says all citizens have the freedom to practice and change their religion. It told us arrests were usually related to cases of forgery of official documents. It says Copts have been appointed to top public positions and religious institutions are allowed to publish their own periodicals. It told us Egypt's constitution and laws prohibit any discrimination on any basis, including religion. For the Zabaleen, religious resistance is as much a part of their life as recycling rubbish. I joined Father Peter on another spiritual house call. The house is right in the middle of the slum, the stink of refuse rising up the stairwell. Inside, we find a large gathering. Rafat Fatih told me this is his extended family, all Christians.
This is quite a well-off family with teachers and government workers and church workers in it, and they don't necessarily, they're not engaged directly in the Zabaleen business themselves. They don't sort the rubbish.
Rafat said he's a well-off shopkeeper who came to the ghetto by choice.
بس يعني خدت على المنطقة وخدت على السكن هنا اهوت وكده ويعني وبعدين هو ربنا اللي بيستر يعني أنا.
When he first moved here, the rubbish was a real problem. He said to himself, I can't even survive because of the smell and the stench and the rubbish. But then I thought, I'm with other Christians and it's because of the faith and the Christianity that I'm here. And then even if my children have diseases from the rubbish, I want them to live here with other Christians.
Today's gathering is for an ancient Coptic ritual. It's the home blessing of Rafat's son, a 7-day-old baby boy named Mina. These are some of the many Copts not working in recycling. But it's telling of the pressures they face that even prosperous Christians choose the Zabaleen ghetto in defiance of the filth and disease as a sanctuary from discrimination.
Now to the Pacific Islands nation of Vanuatu, which is fighting to defend the reputation of its potent national drink, kava. Kava has been banned by some Western countries following claims the brew causes liver damage. And it's restricted in Australia due to its abuse in some Aboriginal communities. But with national honour at stake, Vanuatu is fighting back. In Vanuatu, they call it the root of happiness. These humble plant roots are the key ingredient for the Pacific region's great traditional drink, kava.
And Priya.
And Vanuatu's kava is the most potent of them all. My new best friends, Priya and Nere, are about to reveal how kava has been prepared, according to tribal custom, for thousands of years. Of course, those were the days before electric blenders found their way to the islands. What do I do?
Just chew it.
Okay. Oh, that's, even I can do that. Okay. Well, my mouth is not going numb. I won't be able to talk in about 5 minutes, which some people would say is not a bad thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Different colour.
Yeah. Because you're white skin, so I'm white. Yeah.
White kava.
White kava. Now, going to mix the kava like this.
Priya says kava drinking first originated here in Vanuatu before spreading across the Pacific in a more diluted form.
Vanuatu kava is very strong, more than Richie. Because Richie kava, because they use powder kava, When you go just cold, drink it and finish it.
Oh, that's too much for me.
Huh?
Too much?
No,
Yeah.
this one is too small. You have got the big body.
Oh, mate,
Yeah.
I'll be senseless after drinking this. And yes, it tastes just how it looks, with the flavour and consistency of muddy river water. Cheers. In traditional society, kava drinking was regulated by the chiefs. Yeah.
When you get 2-3 cell kava or when you've got the bed, early in the morning you wake up, you feel fresh.
No hangover.
No hangover.
Thankfully, Priya was right about the lack of a hangover. The next morning, we're crashing along with the world's leading kava expert, French scientist Dr. Vincent Lebeau.
It's less expensive.
He spent 30 years studying and drinking kava. It's an important export crop, and growing it is a profitable business. So the kava tends to be either very well hidden or well guarded.
Yes, theft is a major problem on this island. It takes about 3 to 5 years to cultivate kava, and therefore it's a highly valuable product. Let's go down this way, I think.
About 15,000 hectares of kava is cultivated on the more inaccessible outer islands.
This way.
But here on the main island of Afate, the plants are concealed in forests and vegetable gardens.
Careful, because
These are plants?
yes, these
Yeah.
are plants. Here they are. This is a very young one. This is called Piper metisticum. Comes from the Greek metustikos, which means intoxicating. So it's the intoxicating pepper. It's the same family as the black pepper that we are all using, but it's well known for its inebriating properties. These roots are the roots that we are using.
Dr. Lebeau says kava isn't addictive.
And these active ingredients exist only in
It's used in traditional medicine, both as an effective antiseptic and anaesthetic.
If you chew that, you feel the local anesthetic effect.
I've experienced that. In fact, it felt like a trip to the dentist.
But in Europe, there have been deaths attributed to kava-based health tablets. As a result, kava is now banned or a controlled substance in several European countries, the UK and Canada. Dr. Lebeau says kava isn't the problem, it's the chemicals used to produce the pills.
So what they were selling in Europe, was it kava?
Not at all. It was something else. Unfortunately, they had a huge media coverage, and consumers throughout the world now are scared. They suspect kava to be hepatotoxic, to produce some toxic effect on the liver. I cannot understand how it could be toxic, because here in the South Pacific, half of the population drinks, and we cannot find any side effects.
Few outsiders drink Vanuatu's potent traditional kava, most preferring the gentler brand, found in supermarkets. It's powdered and much weaker, but last year, Australia heavily restricted the importation of this type of kava due to misuse in Aboriginal communities.
But they're drinking too much of it in Australia.
This is what I understand, or they are mixing it with the alcohol, which is something we never do. Well, this is a typical kava bar. We also call them nakamals. There are about 300 in town.
Okay. This is the rush hour, is it?
It is, exactly, so we better not miss the rush hour.
This tree, it's extraordinary.
This is a typical banyan tree. We call them nabanga in Vanuatu. And in the islands, the nakamals are always set up underneath the banyan tree.
Yeah? Why is that?
Well, that's for custom purposes, I mean ceremonial purposes, and they believe that the spirits are having their house somewhere into the roots of this huge tree.
But this is no ordinary nakamal, is it? I mean, where are we here? Just
Well,
explain.
this one is a little bit special because we are just across the road from the parliament.
Oh, okay. So we might be knocking shells with...
The prime minister or the leader of the opposition.
Oh, okay,
Or the
right.
two of them together.
You think there's perhaps room for one in Canberra?
Maybe more than one, yes.
And sure enough, we soon find opposition leader Moana Kakasas working the crowd. A migrant from Tahiti, he's taken to kava with a passion. Cheers. And of course, there's the obligatory round of shells before any talk.
Wow.
Put some bite in it. Oh, OK. What impact does the kava have, if you like, on the standard of political debate? It's right next door.
Since we have lots of kava drinking, we have less problem. Before, drunkenness was a problem. People drink alcohol, they fight.
Yeah.
With kava, we don't have any more this problem.
Kava bars didn't exist before Vanuatu's independence in 1980. All this is the product of social engineering, designed to lower the crime rate. A prohibitive duty was slapped on alcohol, making kava the affordable brew of choice.
If alcohol was cheap or readily available, I think that we would have more crimes in Port Vila than we have today, because we have quite a lot of unemployed youth which have left the islands and are hanging around town doing nothing. But because of kava, I think it's maintaining the society in an harmonious manner.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Well, I'll drink to that. After a few shells, it's easy to slide into Vanuatu's kava culture, though it remains an acquired taste. A recent international survey declared Vanuatu's people to be the happiest on earth. In good company, on a perfect tropical evening, you begin to understand why. And many would like to bring a little dose of that happiness to our shores. But while individuals travelling to Australia can bring in up to 2 kilos of kava for their own personal use, the ban on commercial importation still stands. However, Canberra is now reviewing these restrictions following lobbying efforts by the Pacific Islands communities here. Well, that's all for tonight. I hope you enjoyed the show. You can catch up on past programs by visiting our website, where you can also let us know what you think. But before we go tonight, a quick look at next week's program. Until then, good night.
I'm Trevor Borman in Nepal, a place that's been luring adventurous travellers for decades. But now there's something else to write home about. This land in the clouds is a kingdom no more. The world's last Hindu monarchy has been given the royal shove. You've chucked them out of the palace.
There is not any sympathy among the masses to the monarchy.
Hello, I'm Eric Campbell. I'll be reporting on sex in the city in Beijing.
Sex is a lot of fun. Sex is obviously more fun than movies or other kind of entertainment. And people nowadays are crazy for entertainment.